I am Shinhee's most capable secretary. I specialize in getting rid of women he has tired of. One drunken accident, and he climbed into my bed. I clearly realized, this time, I have to get rid of myself. Shinhee frowned as he read my resignation letter. What do you mean? I'm going back to marry someone. 01. I have been Shinhee's secretary for 5 years, and I have gotten rid of no less than 50 women for him. Chen Hao. As a woman yourself, you should understand what I really want. The woman opposite me was screaming at me hysterically, as if she really loved Shinhee. I skillfully took out a bank card from my bag and handed it over. 500,000 yuan, this is Shinhee's compensation to you. What does he take me for? It's not that I'm heartless, it's just that I've seen too many scenes like this and have become numb. Shinhee has always been ruthless. When he likes you, he can pluck the stars from the sky for you. But when he gets tired of you, he will casually throw you into the dust heap. Seeing that I didn't react, the person on the other side casually splashed the coffee in front of him in my face. I want to see him. At this moment, I was only glad that she was drinking an iced Americano, otherwise it would have been a cup of boiling water and I would have been disfigured. After tidying up the liquid on my face, I calmly took back the bank card. Mr. Shen said if you're not satisfied, there's nothing to talk about. Wait. Just as I was about to get up, my hand was held down. This 500,000 yuan is what he already owed me. I nodded in agreement. Scum like Shinhee deserves to bleed. It's best if all the girls in the world can get his 500,000 yuan for free. This is his compensation for being a scourge. Chen Hao, don't think that just because you're Shinhee's dog, you can act like a bully. Just wait, your next life won't be any better than mine. Nonsense. I'm clearly the eunuch by the emperor's side and the maid by the empress's side. How can she call me a dog? Next time I want to blow in the ear, the severance pay will be reduced to 490,000. 02. Back at the office, Shinhee frowned at the wet collar of my suit. She did it. I shook my head and looked like a green tea, it's easy to negotiate. Shinhee let out a snort from his nose. Don't pretend, you deliberately didn't dry it and wanted to report me. I can see it. I was a little embarrassed when I was exposed, and I was preparing to make some excuses. But who knew Shinhee would be human for once? Go back, you get 2 days off, and starting next month, your salary will increase by 5%. If I'm going to be a dog, I might as well be a dog. Dogs can get promotions and raises, but humans have to work hard. 997. 03. Shinhee has 5 secretaries, and all of them except me graduated from prestigious schools. He said he picked me because I'm ordinary. Ordinary in appearance, ordinary in education, and even my name is so ordinary. At first, I was so angry that I wanted to quit. But when I saw the high salary in the contract, I replied carefully with trembling hands that what Mr. Shen said was true. Shinhee nodded and his personality was also ordinary. It's outrageous to say, because of my unremarkable appearance, I became the boss's second in command instead. The boss handles his work, and I help him handle the women. I had just finished complaining to my best friend when Shinhee's phone rang again. When I arrived at the bar in a hurry, Shinhee was already surrounded by 5 or 6 women. He was drunk and outnumbered, and all he could say was that he would show me what would happen when my assistant arrived. The biggest coward of all, looking at the women, who were like wolves ready to devour him, had to speak timidly. Excuse me, could you please move your hand off my boss's butt? On the way home, Shinhee kept accusing me of being such a wimp and making him lose face. How is it that after all these years, you've made no progress at all? You should be thanking me for getting you to where you are now. The word wimp stung me to the core. The car slammed on the brakes, and Shinhee's head slammed back against the seat. Chen Hao. I ignored him and dropped him off on the street. Call your other, non-wimpy assistants. Within 10 minutes, Shinhee sent another text. Chen Hao, I'll give you my location. Come and pick me up. I couldn't care less. I switched off my phone, closed my eyes and went to sleep. Not only was he my boss, even if the Emperor of Heaven had come, I wouldn't have picked him up. The next day, as soon as I switched on my phone, the work group exploded. Did you hear? Mr. Shen was almost raped last night. Oh my God, did he succeed? I heard he was in hospital. The group was abuzz with discussion, but I was terrified. Could the news from last night have been a text message from the boss asking for help? Thinking about the scene outside the bar and my own cold-hearted actions, my heart finally stopped pounding. I immediately grabbed 2 fruit plates and went to the hospital. As I looked at my boss, whose face had been bandaged up like a panda, I burst into tears. It's all my fault. I'm sorry, Mr. Shen. A familiar voice came from the doorway. I'm so glad to hear that. Oh. Mr. Shen is fine. Then who is that lying on the bed? The one who molested me. I let out a sigh of relief when I heard this. That was a close call. I almost lost my job. When I glared at him, he said, the man also molested you. 04. After this incident, I never dared not reply to Shenhe's messages. I diligently took care of the people and replied to WeChat messages immediately. Shenhe was very satisfied with my work attitude and, with a wave of his hand, let me win the first prize in the annual meeting. In the envious eyes of the whole company, I read out the prize loudly. A chance to have dinner with the boss once. In a fit of anger, I got angry for a while. Dinner was from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. Shenhe's eyes were fixed on me. Chen Hao, are you eating like a banquet? I ignored him and continued ordering food. Capitalist money is easy to make. Not only was the piece of foie gras smaller than the gap between my teeth, but I also had to wait half an hour for it. After I had finally eaten my fill, I burped loudly before nodding contentedly and telling Shen to settle the bill. I turned around and saw Shen passed out next to me. Next to him were 2 bottles of Lafite Rothschild that had been emptied. He really is a rich guy, drinking Lafite like it's herb water. With the experience from last time, I was afraid to just leave Shenhe on the roadside. So I simply took him straight to my rented room. But when I woke up, I realized that I really was going to lose my job this time. 05. When the white body next to me was exposed to me, I still prayed that just anyone would do. Whether it was a man, a woman, or even a transvestite. It wasn't until Shenhe's face appeared in front of me that I finally gave up. I swore that I would never eat foie gras again in my life, and who knew that there was also alcohol in it. I even ate 20 servings at once. Before Shenhe woke up, I picked up my clothes in a flustered manner and prepared to sneak out. A lazy voice sounded behind me, bring me breakfast when you come back, soy milk without soy, and eggs without eggs. What was even more blatant than his body was his difficulty. Memories of last night flooded back. A drunk Shenhe insisted on taking a shower. With a shred of reason, I refused. But he didn't listen to my advice, and instead started taking off his clothes on his own. The moment I saw his abs, my resistance turned into lust. I wanted to see more and more. Wide shoulders and narrow waist, I never thought Shenhe would be so well built. I thought you could seduce others because of money. When I said this, I couldn't help wiping my mouth. Shenhe was dissatisfied with my remarks and snorted. Waving his hand, I inexplicably started rubbing his back. As I rubbed, things began to get out of control. Beauty is a mistake, and foie gras is harmful. I swore on my forehead that I would never eat so much just to take advantage of someone again. Compared to my panic, Shenhe was obviously much more at ease. He calmly pulled up his pants, looked at the watch on his wrist, and acted like a capitalist. It was now 8:30, and there was still an hour and a half until work. When are you going to go buy me breakfast? 06. I don't know if it's because I'm guilty of something, but I always feel that the way people look at me when I leave the office is not quite right. So I'm going to avoid any suspicion with him. But Shenhe just couldn't stop laughing. You're my assistant, if you want to avoid suspicion, just quit. He must be hinting at me. I know exactly what will happen to every woman. That night, I made a decision that went against my ancestors to quit this well-paid and easy job. But the moment I received my pay slip, I hesitated. I decided to wait until after the new year. I could take paid leave anyway, and I would never have the chance to do it again if I didn't do it now. After thinking it over, I was finally able to face Shenhe with a clear mind. Throughout the whole process, Shenhe acted as if nothing had happened. Sure enough, an old hand is an old hand, and the thought of this made me even angrier. I deliberately stole 2 staplers from the office to show my dissatisfaction with him. I waited until I could finally go on holiday, and packed my things early. I was ready to rush out of the office as soon as 5 o'clock struck. Just as the time had struck, Shenhe caught me coming in. Strong brother, what's with the airs? What's with the bossy CEO speech? After mentally cursing him for 100 characters, I put on a servile expression. Dear President, may I ask what is the matter that has caused you to take up my precious vacation time? As soon as the words fell from my lips, Shen pulled a velvet gift box out of a drawer. It's for you. Inside the gift box was a necklace of green gemstones. Although I didn't know the brand, I had sent many gifts on his behalf. From my shallow experience, this necklace is very expensive, very expensive. Chen Hao, Happy New Year. 07. Ever since I was young, I was the invisible person in the class. On the day I graduated from high school, my homeroom teacher couldn't even call out my name. But Chen called me by name on the day of my interview. Chen Hao, you're here for the interview too. When I first met Chen he was the brother of a student I taught. That kid had terrible grades and was stubborn. When he met Chen he was arguing with me. What third-rate university is good enough to give me private tutoring? Get out of here. As soon as the words left his mouth, a slipper flew at the boy's head. How dare you? Do you know the undergraduate rate? Do you know that with these grades you won't even get into a good junior college? The boy was too scared to speak as Shen continued to lecture me with disdain. Shen sat on the side all afternoon listening to me lecture, and the child listened extremely attentively. After a class, I was packing up to leave when I was blocked in my path. You're something, little teacher. I was so embarrassed by these words that I packed up and fled, blushing. I never saw Shen again after that. Until I saw Shen's recruitment, and resolutely sent in my resume. I thought he would have forgotten about me long ago, but who knew he would not only recognize me, but also call out my name. My memory was interrupted by the ringing of my phone, and the word Shen appeared on the screen. Chen Hao, when are you coming back to City A? City A is 3,000 kilometers away from my hometown. I looked at the time on my phone. Shen I haven't even boarded the plane home yet. Oh. Shen hung up the phone quickly. Something's wrong, something's really wrong. 08. Throughout the Spring Festival, Shen kept inexplicably sending me messages. Chen Hao, I can't find my tie. Chen Hao, I ate every single one of those awful tang yuan, and they were actually sprout flavored. Chen Hao, the New Year's holiday is so boring, I want to go to work already. Why didn't you reply to me? I looked at the pile of messages with my hands on my forehead, and simply pretended I hadn't seen them. But the next second, Shen sent a photo of his abs. Every muscle was clearly visible, with smooth lines and a few water droplets that hadn't dried yet on top. Just as I was admiring it, the other person withdrew the picture. A slip of the hand. I began to suspect that Shen had some serious illness. Whenever I was in his presence, he always wanted to dock my salary. Now he bothers me every day. I think your boss has fallen in love with you. I shook my head cautiously. It must be because without me as his assistant, he can't get anything done. His love is shorter than the shelf life of bread. My friend scoffs. What else would he do if he didn't have a girlfriend? As soon as I finish speaking, a message from Shen pops up again. Chen Hao, which shirt do you think I look good in? A picture of a leopard print shirt and a pink shirt appears on the screen. My friend is silent for a long time. Your boss is quite the flirt. Because of what my friend said, I was distracted until I started work. If he really likes me, then I really have to get ready to run. After all, my biggest responsibility in this company is to dismiss women who have whimsical ideas about marrying him. This time, it's my turn. After receiving my red envelope, I stepped into Shen's office in high heels. Mr. Shen, I need to talk to you. Chen Hao, it's a good thing I wanted to see you. Perhaps he didn't expect such a tacit understanding between us, and Shen was taken aback for a moment before speaking slowly. I'll go first. Chen Hao, go out with me. I'm quitting. Those were the two sentences that came out at the same time, and I was so embarrassed that I scratched out a set of the Shen group. He actually said he wanted to go out with me. He really is a veteran. Shen obviously looked bad, and asked me with a stern face why I was resigning. Bad salary. I shook my head, knowing that if I quit, I would never find such a gossipy and well-paid job again. So you have a problem with me? I continued shaking my head. If I had a problem with me, I couldn't just say so. Then why? I'm going back to my hometown to get married. 09. Shen is crazy. Ever since I mentioned resigning, he's been stirring up trouble all day. What kind of crappy coffee is this? It smells like coffee. No water in the office, it's making my head hurt. Even when I smile at Assistant Lee next door, he gives me a scolding. What are you smiling at? You're ugly as hell. My colleagues can't help but complain to me about him. He's like a firecracker every day, and anyone who laughs in the office makes him go crazy. It's no wonder he's going crazy. Before, he was the one who couldn't get rid of people, but now it's his turn to be dumped. It was hard for him to accept at first, and losing his mind was the least of his problems. Just as I finished complaining, Shen suddenly appeared in front of my desk. "Chen Hao, I can't find one of my belts. Did you leave it at your place? I'll come get it later." His words were extremely ambiguous, and I couldn't utter a complete sentence after stammering for a long time. Gossiping eyes surrounded me, and I pretended to be calm and asked him back, "What do you mean by my place? Isn't your stuff at your place?" Who knew that Shen was so well-reasoned? That morning, I walked in a hurry, as if I were looking for my belt. I noticed that the stairs were becoming more and more ambiguous, so I hurriedly stopped. "Mr. Shen, are you saying that you accidentally lost it the other night when you walked me home?" "No, it's just that I didn't go home that night." Shen was about to argue again, but I immediately covered his mouth. Then I leaned into his ear and threatened him ominously, saying that if he spoke again, I would really pretend to be SM and beat the hell out of him. Shen shut up, but the onlookers couldn't keep their eyes off me. "Chen Hao, so you resigned to go home and be a rich wife." On the surface, these words seemed like congratulations, but in reality, they sounded like a threat. I simply couldn't enter Shen's house. But I've always been a pushover, and I was leaving after handing over my work. Thinking that it is better to avoid trouble, I nodded in agreement. The wedding is next month, so I hope everyone will stay away. As soon as the words fell, someone who had just returned to the office returned. He looked unhappy. "Chen Hao, who are you going to marry?" "Who?" "If I could, I would marry the god of wealth, and I wouldn't even mind being a second wife." 10. On the day I left, Shen didn't even come to work. I placed the belt I had found after rummaging through my things on his doorstep. My close colleague, EE, was reluctant to let me go. "Chen Hao, once you're gone, we won't be able to hear any more gossip about General Manager Shen." I patted her hand reassuringly. I still had to leave early, otherwise my big mouth would sooner or later reveal all my secrets. "You didn't even say whether General Manager Shen was good in bed last time." I tried to remember, but I really couldn't recall much detail from that night. But from my years of reading fan fiction, I should have woken up with a sore back and legs, but I felt almost no discomfort. No way. To prevent her from following in my footsteps one day, I carefully reminded her again that it was very bad. "Gee, I didn't realize that General Manager Shen, who is 1.8 meters tall, is actually a big tree-hanging chili." I nodded. "I didn't say that. Even if Shen wants to find someone to blame one day, he won't find it on me." Immediately, she changed the name of the company group without a boss to "Is the Little Pepper Crazy Today?" It took a lot of effort for me not to laugh out loud, but soon I couldn't stop laughing. Because the little pepper messaged me. 11. When I appeared neatly downstairs in front of Shen, I was still spitting out my own dog-like behavior. I'm obviously not his assistant anymore, but why am I still at his beck and call? If I were in ancient times, I would be sorry for my loser-like appearance if I didn't become a eunuch. "Do you still have something to do?" Shen has been staring at me for half an hour, and I have finished 3 cups of coffee without saying a word. Seeing that the massage time I booked is almost up, I can't help but urge him. "Mr. Shen, have you taken a mute pill?" Shen drank the coffee in his hand in one gulp, as if he had made up his mind about something. He finally spoke. "Chen Hao, about that night." After that night, neither of us mentioned it again, in tacit agreement. Whether it was a one-night stand or a relationship between a superior and subordinate, I was ashamed to talk about either. Now that he had brought it up so bluntly, I felt my blood rush to my head, causing me to speak incoherently. "It's your fault." It was rare for Shen to not argue back, but instead, he gave in and confessed, "I'm sorry." "Then you're responsible." Shen didn't say anything else, and after a long silence, he finally said, "What do you want?" "I'm not going to marry you. I want the severance pay that other people get." Those 2 sentences appeared simultaneously in the quiet cafe, and once again, I awkwardly fidgeted with my feet. Shen's narcissism is really too serious. Compared to him, I would rather get more money. Or maybe he didn't think I was so realistic. Shen's face turned from green to purple before he finally managed to stammer out a few words. "Okay." As he walked out of the coffee shop, I couldn't help but call out to him. "Mr. Shen. You didn't drop your belt at my house that day." I looked for it for a long time but couldn't find it. But I bought a new one and hung it on the doorknob in your office. I'll cancel the work phone card, so don't contact me in the future. After all, I'm getting married, and I'm afraid he'll be jealous. I don't know if he understood what I meant, but Shinhee stood motionless in the doorway for a long time before he said with a sigh, I understand. 12. I'm not an obtuse fool. Shinhee's recent actions have clearly shown that he's unhappy about my resignation. His frequent attempts at reconciliation were more like tests. If I showed the slightest sign of willingness, he would definitely give me more and better. But that was all he could give me. I liked him, but that was not enough to support me taking a risk with my life. Rather than starting a relationship that I knew would end in failure, I might as well end it before it even began. I had done this to his girlfriend many times before, and I knew the process better than anyone. In order to prevent myself from looking too bad later, I might as well quit early. What's more, I took his severance pay, and he would definitely think that I'm no different from other women who want his money. Indeed, there is no difference. Men are like sand in the hands. It is more secure to have the money in your hands. I just didn't expect Shinhee to be so generous, and he gave me one more zero than the women I had previously dismissed. 500W is enough for me to buy a villa in my hometown and enjoy my retirement. I slept with a man who is even more handsome than a male model, and I also received money that I could never earn in my lifetime. Chen Hao, you are so lucky. Ha ha ha. Before I could be happy for 2 days, I fainted due to menstrual pain. When I woke up, my best friend kept scolding me for not taking care of my body for the sake of money. She said she would drag me to the hospital for a checkup no matter what. Menstrual pain is no small matter, you must take good care of yourself. I nodded obediently as I held the medicine in my hand. I went home and fell asleep in a daze. I was woken up again by a loud knock on the door. Outside the door was Shinhee, looking a little disheveled with sweat dripping from his forehead and his eyes red. Without waiting for me to say anything, Shinhee viciously pushed me against the door. Chen Hao, don't even think about marrying someone else with my child inside you. 13. Despite my repeated explanations that I was not pregnant at all, Shinhee still looked at me with disbelief. Then why did you go to the gynecology department? Brother, the gynecology department is a combination of gynecology and obstetrics. Not every girl who goes there wants to have a baby. It took me half a day to explain that I only went there to see about my menstrual pain. Why did your period come early? At this point, Shinhee twisted and squirmed, his embarrassed manner lowering his body as he asked if it had anything to do with having sex with me. What kind of pervert keeps track of my period? After that day, Shinhee appeared downstairs in front of my house every morning, just like a jobless wanderer. Every day, a different color of luxury car was parked on the curb, and the neighbors all thought I was a gold digger. Every day a different person, every day a new trick. Big sister, how come you're so capable? Teach me, please. The bald guy looked at me curiously, asking for advice. I took a good look at him from head to toe. Hey, I'll take one. Perhaps he couldn't stand my nonsense, because Shinhee grabbed my hand and threw it straight into his car. The bald guy was still shouting, introduce me to a good one next time. I promised with a smile, and Shinhee frowned and asked, you usually chat with strange men like this? He is different. That's different. He is one. Finally, Shinhee could not stand it anymore and angrily said, do you know what I come to your house every day for? Although I knew the answer, I still pretended to be stupid. I have nothing to do. It seems that Shen's is going to close down, the boss is loitering in the street every day. Shinhee was so angry that he almost couldn't catch his breath. His eyes went white, and I almost thought he was going to faint. Don't you know how busy Shin's is? I come here to play with you every day, ignoring contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I realized that he was really mad at me before I sheepishly shut my mouth. Seeing my quail-like appearance, Shinhee sighed and lowered his voice. Chen Hao, I'm chasing you. I've never been liked by a guy before, and no one has ever called my name so lovingly. For a moment I was a little stunned, but I quickly recovered. Shinhee, we're not a good match. What's not a good match? You're not married, I'm not married. Speaking of which, he yelled out, quickly telling that unsuitable marriage partner to get lost, I was here first. Back home, I casually lied about getting married, but I didn't expect him to take it seriously. For a moment, I didn't know whether to explain it or not. What can a small-town youth compare to me? Am I as handsome as you? Am I as rich as you? Am I as charming as you? I shook my head and said in a decisive tone. I like faithful birds, but yours is not faithful. Shen-He puffed up his neck and blushed. Where am I unfaithful? Don't forget that I got rid of all your girlfriends, Shen-He, and I probably remember their names better than you do. When it comes to this, Shen-He's eyes are full of disdain. What kind of girlfriend were they to me? I knew it. A cold-hearted person like Shen-He would never admit to them. He wouldn't even give them a name. They were just passing clouds. Now he's obsessed with me because he's not used to not having me around to tell him what to do. Plus, I refuse to submit to some of his filters. If this goes on for a long time, I don't know what will happen to me without the filters. What those girls said about what would happen to me wasn't necessarily worse than what would happen to them, but it turned out to be prophetic. Shen-He, I'm not like them. I know, that's why I'm chasing you. Seeing that this person keeps saying that we are different, I simply spoke my mind. I want to get married. I just want a normal relationship. Getting married, having children, and growing old together, not just being a couple in love. What I can give you is more than that. Shen-He stared at me with a puzzled expression. Getting married is not necessarily the best thing. But I just want to get married. What's more, even if I marry you, I don't want to deal with your family's feuds at all. Shen-He slammed the door and left, leaving me in the car, lost in thought. He said I was pushing him, but in fact I was pushing myself. If I were someone who craved pleasure and could withdraw at any time, then I would have played along. If I were just a vain person, I would have accepted being supported. But I love money but refuse to sell my self-respect. I have the desire but not the courage. Shen-He once said that I was a very ordinary person, and he was right. I just want to save my little money and live my little life. In order to completely get away from this farce, I immediately booked a plane ticket back to my hometown 2 hours later. I asked the landlord to get rid of all the things in the rental house for me, and then transferred her a sum of money to run away. It turns out that traveling for the rich is so simple, and I let out a long breath of relief. It's not surprising that I worked like a dog for 5 years. I'm rich and happy. 14. According to the law of conservation of the world, when I'm happy, someone else is unhappy. I heard that Shen-He fired 40 people overnight just because one contract was not successfully renewed. Chen-Hao, fortunately you left early. Now the company's grievances can resurrect 10 evil swordsmen. I lay on the recliner, eating potato chips and happily listening to how my former colleagues scolded Shen-He. Life after I returned home was very relaxing. I didn't have to be on edge 24 hours a day, waiting for the phone to ring. And no one would suddenly say, let's get a GPS and have you pick me up. I realized that the sun at 2 p.m. is so beautiful. I was feeling pleased with myself when a figure suddenly blocked the sun above my head. I was basking in the sun when I suddenly squinted as someone blocked the sun above my head. Geez, go away, I'll buy you chips later, my sister said. The neighbor's kid was always causing trouble. Chen-Hao. A familiar voice rang out, and I shuddered in fear. The chips in my hand fell to the ground. I hadn't seen him for a long time, and Shen-He's face had become much thinner. The suit that originally fit him looked a size too big. The stubble on his chin shows that he has indeed been very tired recently. But what does that have to do with me? The company is in a mess and everyone is panicking. Chen-Hao, I need you. Are you kidding? I'm just an assistant, not a director. Not to mention an assistant who has been involved in a love affair. What can I do? Go and get your 50 ex-girlfriends to replace the 40 employees. Shen-He looked aggrieved. They are not my girlfriends. They are my father's half-buried wife, who is trying to find a stepmother for me. Shen-He's mother died young, and his father loved to find young girls when he was young. Now that he is almost 70 years old, he is still looking for a heartbeat. But the novelty of him passed too quickly, and he could change up to 3 times a month at the most. And the reason those women are willing to climb into the bed of an old man is, without exception, for money. Shen-He was so fed up with dealing with them that he simply added me to the job description. Anyway, you're a coward, so you won't say anything to anger them. My father will be able to keep his integrity even at this late stage. I was shocked when I learned the truth. I couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. Your father is truly a man among men. Shen-He's face clearly showed a dark line, and he called my name Chen-Hao with a stern face. I immediately put on a teasing look, so why did you ask me to come back? You couldn't find that 50-year-old ex-wife. You just need to stay with me. Chen-Hao, I need you. 15. Back in familiar surroundings, I shamelessly bullied people at work. It's not the same as before, when I was Shenhe's dog, and now Shenhe is my dog. Whenever I cough, Shenhe has to scold the human resources department for the high formaldehyde content in the office. The wheel of fortune has turned, and I am the boss. But this time, Shenhe has assigned me a difficult task, to find the traitor. God knows there are 1,800 people in the company, where on earth am I supposed to find the traitor? But Shenhe seems to have a lot of confidence in me, and has given me a pile of information to go through. I've seen your teaching ability, Chen Hao, you're actually very good. I only trust you in the whole company. Shenhe and his father are not on good terms, and they have been trying to bring each other down for a long time. He has been unhappy for many years about the fact that he has repeatedly driven away his girlfriends. Not to mention the fact that he still feels young and strong and can still hold power for another 20 years. Of the 40 people who were laid off last time, most of them were distant relatives who didn't work for the money. Those sons of bitches, those Phoenix men, people who are supported by my mother's resources. They think they can get away with it. I was wrong to think that Shenhe was just taking it out on the staff because he couldn't get me. Luckily, I have years of experience remembering names, and soon I had a thick stack of information to go through. I thought it was the legend of Zhenhuan, but it turned out to be the poor relatives acting recklessly. I could see through the messy web of relationships at a glance. Shenhe is such a fool, indulging them for so many years. After I had collected evidence of those people taking kickbacks and embezzling public funds and was preparing to claim credit from Shenhe, Shenhe stared at me with serious eyes and asked, "See, it's not that difficult, is it?" "What do you mean?" "Chen Hao, I've given it a lot of thought. When I said I didn't want to get married, it wasn't because I didn't want to marry you, it's just that my parents' marriage was a total failure. Their marriage was full of too many interests, and for a while I thought that marriage was about tying two free and independent bodies to each other. Rather than saying that I reject marriage, it's more that I'm afraid of having an unhappy marriage. But I've thought about it carefully, and if it's you, it seems that I'm not that afraid." Shenhe's long speech fooled me. He said that last time I said that the rich and powerful are bound by rules every day. So he deliberately laid it all bare for me. This confession caught me a little off guard. Seeing me silent, Shenhe became anxious. "Chen Hao, you like me." 16. Shenhe was right. If I didn't like him, how could I have applied for the job at Shen's? And I wouldn't have been his dog for 5 years. But I was a little embarrassed when he said it so bluntly. "It's okay, I know the charm of my brother." I rolled my eyes at him, this Pushinan. After that day, the company underwent a major reshuffle, and those with the ability were able to stay on. Those who had only relied on connections to get by were all laid off. Looking at the accounting department's report, I saw the N+1 compensation, and it made me feel bad. If I had known, I would have applied for N+1 compensation too. Shenhe laughed at me for being so unambitious, saying that being my wife would be much better than your measly compensation. I shook my head, what's in my hands is mine. Otherwise, everything is just empty talk. But I overestimated Shenhe's IQ, and he actually thought I was hinting at him. That night, he came to my house with his property ownership certificate and transfer agreement. "Chen Hao, you are responsible for me being homeless after I sign." I was shocked. "Then I won't sign." "Why?" Shenhe's face turned a bit ugly. "Damn it, how can someone be so angry when they can't give away money? I'm going to fight these damned capitalists." "Why?" "What's the point of me wanting your house? I'll be going back to my hometown in a few days." I don't know which words hit Shenhe's sore spot, and suddenly Shenhe jumped up like a dog that had eaten firecrackers. "What? You still want to go back and get married, right?" Saying this, he slammed his phone down in front of me and called the adulterer. I weakly reminded him that in front of my fiancée, he should be the one cheating. Shenhe was so angry that he drank 3 glasses of water to calm down. "Didn't we say that after you finished your company's business, you would let me go back to my hometown?" Shenhe looked at me like I was stupid. "That was a delaying tactic to trick you into coming back." He said that these lackeys are not difficult to deal with at all. That scene of looking haggard was a deliberate attempt to make me feel bad and trick me into coming back. I was so angry that I wanted to leave that night, but Shenhe started acting like a scoundrel. "You can go back, but you have to fall in love with me, and I'll visit you twice a week." "No way, I refuse." Shenhe immediately called the other 4 assistants for 10 minutes and found out Chen Hao's lover. The 4 assistants were indeed high achievers, and within 5 minutes they had extracted from their best friend the lie that I had said I wanted to get married just so I could quit my job. Shenhe's face turned from red to green after hearing this. I was about to sulk and go to bed, but the door was blocked by a leg. Shenhe dragged me into his arms, and the more I struggled, the tighter he held me. Damn it. Chen Hao, I was about to die of jealousy, so please comfort me. 17. In the end, I didn't escape the temptation of beauty and money, and became his girlfriend under Shenhe's coaxing. After hearing about this, my former colleagues came to congratulate me. I thought you were joking when you said you wanted to be a rich wife. I pretended to be coy. As you know, I am a person who has always been irresistible. President Shen is no exception. Shenhe on the side couldn't stop smiling. That night, I dug out the grudge book I wrote while I was still working and asked him to take revenge for me. Xiao Wang fed my company fish to death. This is extremely evil. Li Xiao listened to my gossip but didn't return it to me. This crime deserves to be punished. Luo Xiao secretly drank the coffee I brewed for you. Deduct her salary. Shenhe listened with relish like a judge, as if he was going to find them guilty of something. This makes me seem petty, so I simply close the notebook and start talking to him. Shenhe, when did you first fall in love with me? At the last confession session, I told Shenhe early on that I had liked him since the first time we met. But he has never told me when he first fell in love with me. Shenhe puts aside his usual carefree appearance and stares intently into my eyes as he speaks. If you want me to say a specific time, I'm not really sure. But I think it was when I first remembered your name. Shenhe is so sweet, but luckily I'm not immune to his charms. Extra. Shenhe nearly fainted when he discovered the company group nickname. Who on earth spread the rumor that I was a hothead? I timidly said, who else but me? Shenhe's face turned red like a traffic light. I responded with justification. Who let the 2 of us drink too much last time, and when we woke up the next day, I didn't feel a thing. Wait, Shenhe, you're not impotent, are you? Although I really like him, this is a matter for life. The sooner you say it, the sooner it's over. You can't keep me waiting forever. Shenhe tossed and turned with anger for the whole 3 times, and I suspected that he had taken drugs. The aching in my body after made me react quickly, so the last time we didn't do it at all, did we? Of course not. Huh? Shenhe's ears turned red with shame, looking like a shy girl. That wasn't my first time. Extra 2. Shenhe has been entertaining a lot recently, and is getting home later and later. TikTok keeps pushing videos of what to do if your husband doesn't come home. I started to plan to catch him red-handed. If it really turns out to be true, Shenhe must compensate me with a huge sum of money. Who knew that the private detective I hired would find Shenhe's marriage proposal for me? Knowing in advance the surprise my boyfriend has prepared, how can I act like I don't know about it? Despite being mentally prepared for the marriage proposal, I still cried like a baby. What a big diamond ring, I heard that diamonds are worthless. Oh no, what a waste. Oh, what a beautiful diamond ring. That night, I lay in bed, carefully caressing the diamond ring that was said to have cost 30 million to custom make. Shenhe was sleeping like a pig next to me. I carefully leaned over to his ear and whispered, Shenhe, I love you. The person who was still sleeping suddenly jumped out of bed and turned over. He wanted to hear it from this ear as well. For the sake of the diamond ring, I repeated the words. Who knew that this person would take advantage of the situation and start pointing at his eyes, nose, mouth, hands, and feet? They didn't hear any of it. What if they feel biased and go on strike later? Of course not. There's still a long time ahead. I'll tell you I love you slowly.